Welcome to the Minds Capital Podcast, the show devoted to the growing world of independent sponsors and entrepreneurial private equity. My name is Will Smith, and I'm here with my partners in Minds Capital, Nicholas James and Max Lummis. Today's conversation is with Edoardo Maggini of StarStep Performance Coatings Group. Max, what was your takeaway from our conversation with Edoardo?
Well, StarStep, first of all, is an operator-led industrial consolidator in specialty coatings. So I know the group bought 3 businesses to start with, and they've been working to grow those organically. And obviously, they're looking at other acquisition targets. So that's a little background on what they've been working on. But what was interesting to me particularly was Edoardo identifying that one of his operating partners, and there's 3 of them, one specializes in operations, one specializes in M&A, and the third, which I found interesting, is an HR expert. And when you look at these businesses, or any business for that matter, it's so much less these days about financial engineering as it is about execution. And in the lower middle market, so many of these businesses are so people dependent. And I think that's probably the case with just about all businesses. But Edoardo really highlights the importance of having a true expert on their team that can help them identify the right people and leaders, sometimes ahead of the need, and build the talent pipeline, which will enable, it will enable growth into the future. And so that was an interesting take. And I've seen that in my own business at LCS, where you focus on business development and you focus on product and services. And at the end of the day, you start to outgrow your team pretty quickly the more you push business development, which of course is a big part of Edoardo and his team's theme as well. But unless you can, proactively hire the right people and get the right butts in the right seats, eventually you're very limited. And so I liked his focus on that. I thought that was very helpful and a great thing for sponsors to be thinking about as they, as they grow their businesses. And for first-time sponsors, it's going to be an area which could stifle growth if you're not thinking about it, or it could be one that really accelerates growth and becomes a strategic lever.
My takeaway from the episode was also about the makeup of the team, which you just described, Max. I thought it notable, and you'll hear me ask him in the conversation a few times, that while they do have some finance talent on their team, they are not finance first, the 3 of them. They are not former private equity, former finance people, which makes them a big exception to the rule in independent sponsor land. And on this podcast, the vast majority of our guests do come from some sort of transaction background, usually private equity, sometimes other flavors of finance. But Edoardo and his team are operators first. They are operators from the industry that they're now consolidating in, acquiring in. And so to me, this shows that for any listener out there who might be drawn to the independent sponsor model, but doesn't themselves come from a hardcore finance background, but does have some industry expertise and sees within their own industry opportunity for acquisition, opportunity for consolidation, that Edoardo and his partners are something of a model. I mean, this is a group of operators, industry operators who are now independent sponsors within their industry. And so it definitely has a different flavor than many of our other guests, and should serve as I said, as a model for those of you listening who are not former PE, but really drawn to this model of independent sponsorship. Nicholas, what was your takeaway?
Before I jump into my takeaway, I just wanted to mention that Edoardo sent me a very nice email 3 or 4 days ago. He's Italian, as you guys know, and he's in Cortina, where the Olympics is going on. And he was just giving me a nudge to Norway's performance. And I just wanted to spotlight that Norway had a phenomenal Winter Olympics. So we took 41 medals, including 18 golds. And this is very important for us Norwegians. So it's been a lot of fun over the last couple of weeks. And that's really cool that Edoardo took the time to go watch in person, real life. He didn't tell us that in the recording. As far as the recording itself, one thing that stood out to me was he talked about as they're scaling the specialty platform, they have explored using a capital placement agent to raise the capital and the equity. And so I asked him about the pricing that he had seen as he received term sheets for this. And he said that the pricing varied from 2 to 5% commission on the capital raised, as well as a 20 to 50K retainer upfront before they started to work. So I just thought that was a good data point to keep in mind for other independent sponsors out there before they launch their own capital processes with an advisor.
Right. Well, before we turn to the interview with Edoardo, a reminder that at Minds Capital, we invest equity into independent sponsor-led acquisitions. Our check size is 1 to 3 million per investment, and we average about 1 commitment per month. So if you are a sponsor raising equity for a platform acquisition, submit your deal to us via our website at mindscapital.co. And if you are interested in joining Minds Capital as an LP, there's a pre-registration form also on our website for accredited investors. If you are accredited, please fill that out to be kept in the loop on our future raises. That is at mindscapital.co. Okay, here is the Minds Capital podcast interview with Edoardo Maggini of StarStep Performance Coatings Group. Enjoy. Welcome to the Minds Capital Podcast, your connection to the growing world of independent sponsors and entrepreneurial private equity. We are your hosts, Will Smith and Nicholas James. Edoardo Maggini is an Italian based in New York City and is one of 3 partners at StarStep, a consolidator inside the specialty coating industry. Their niche focus, combined with their operational expertise, have made them the acquirer of choice in their chosen sector. Starting in 2023, they now have $10 million of EBITDA, a number they expect to reach the mid-teens later this year via organic growth and more acquisitions. This is a long-term consolidation with $100 million of EBITDA being the goal. Edoardo Maggini, welcome to the Minds Capital Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Will and Nicholas.
Edoardo, let's start with a little of the background. How did the StarStep platform come together? A little bit of the backstory and thesis around what you're building, please.
Yes. StarStep Performance Coating Groups essentially started like in 2021. Behind StarStep, there are 3 partners, myself, Roger, and Victor. Roger and I, we were friends. We've been knowing each other for a long time. And Victor, the other partner, they were both working at PPG, which is one of the second largest coating groups in the world, after Sherwin-Williams. And Victor, essentially, he was in M&A, in the M&A department of PPG. They were very, very acquisitive. And Roger, he was in the HR. I was in the acquisition space as well, looking for buying companies. We got together in 2021 and decided to join forces and creating we essentially didn't really have a clear idea of what to be, and we knew that we wanted to build an industrial group where leveraging on our operationals and technical skills, something that can be 10 years plus, and with our goal in mind of creating something large that eventually can be sold for an interesting multiple.
Great. And so that was kind of the vague notion in 2021 when you guys got together. Fast forward through those first 2 years and tell us how you kind of refined the thesis and eventually landed on what it now is.
Yeah, from 2021 to 2023, our idea was trying to find a entry platform. We were going after large carve-outs from large companies. We try to take bids to be part of like bids of carve-outs of the architectural division of PPG, which was called PPC. A company, a division that was making like around like $45 million in EBITDA, but we were not successful in pursuing it. We lost the bid with other like strategic or private equity funds that they had like much larger pockets than us. So then in 2023, we realized that we were not like a private equity. Essentially, we were like we were building a smaller industrial group, and so we should have like gone after like smaller companies. And in 2023, we got on the map when we acquired like our 3 companies in that year, and we went from essentially 0 to $5 million in EBITDA.
Okay, so from an attempted acquisition of a $45 million EBITDA carve-out business to buying 3 at once as your quote platform that together represented $5 million of EBITDA. So that is a big shift in strategy. What did you see, or what was the strategy about going actually quite small?
The idea was being able like to manage complexity. As you go smaller in this world, of course, like there is much more complexity, and companies are more messy, and you need to like somehow like after that you acquire them, like build an infrastructure that doesn't exist. The typical companies that we acquire are the founder operators. Usually they found the company like 30-40 years ago. Their background is chemicals. They're chemists, or they're PhDs, or they were working in some R&D lab of some large corporations, and they decided like back in the days, 80s and the 90s, to start their own like little formulation and start their own company. That's the typical company that we see. So they have like all the knowledge, they have all the technical skills, and they also have like most of the time there is not like a sales department or a sales team in place. They do everything. So once something that we do is like actually put in place like a chemist and also like a sales team. That's part of the infrastructure that we build and the value that we add when we buy those smaller company, that it would be an operational headache for bigger players.
And then buying the 3 at once, was that just a happy coincidence, or if you were going to go so small, you needed to assemble more than one to kind of have a real platform right out of the gate?
Yes. The how we got it, like it was we got lucky in the sense that we were on the market. We were looking for like more than one company to create critical mass, and that was like a broker deal. A broker came to us, and he had like this package of 3 companies.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And he presented to us, and that it made sense. One company was in the architectural space. The other one was in the industrial space. And the third company of the package was actually a coating distributor that could be, it was a very, very, very synergetic with the other 2.
And so these 3 companies had a single owner? I mean, say more about the fact that they were being sold as a package.
Yeah, they had like each company had like a different owner. It was not one owner, but each company was like a different owner. Yes,
but the broker was representing all 3 deals at once, and could bring them to you as a kind of, and position it as a package. But you were having to negotiate 3 different acquisitions through 3 different owners and so on.
Yes, exactly.
Do you share more about this broker? It's not too often that you see brokers in the lower middle market pre-consolidate 3 targets in this way. So how did he approach this, and how did you find and partner with him and persuade him that you were the right partner for a combined $5 million EBITDA company?
Yeah, It's rare. I agree. The specific broker, he was specialized in coatings. He checked with me, he checked with us, like I would say once every semester, or twice every year. We engage him with him before, like a year before, like that he came with these 3 deals to us. So he knew that we were on the market, and he knew that what we were looking for.
And so post acquisition of these 3 first businesses, did the thesis that you had going in look like it was going to work, bringing sales to each of the organizations, and whatever other improvements?
Yes, I have to say now, looking back, that almost like 2 years went by since the first acquisition. Like the operational play, it paid off for almost all of them, except for one, for the company that we acquired that was in the architectural space. That's a little bit struggling in our portfolio. I have to say, like the architectural industry is having, like, in the past 2 years is having a hit. So there is also, like, some macroeconomics environment that is not helping. We're not having any more the tailwind when we bought the company, but we're trying, like, to improve it. All the rest of it, the other, like, portfolio companies are after, like, that we took over, like, we saw, like, some improvement in revenues and margin.
Great. And just what does the entire portfolio look like today? We mentioned the revenue number or the EBITDA number. So say more about that, please, and then how many portfolio companies there are.
Yeah. So just to give you, like, a size and on where we are now. We are now, like, little, like, under, like, $70 million in revenue as a group, and $10 million in EBITDA. And we completed acquisition 5, and we will be doing in by end of Q1 acquisition number 6.
You mentioned that the very first deal that you had worked on was a $45 million EBITDA carve-out. And so initially you guys were focused on the same industry, but going for bigger targets. What were some of your takeaways from working on bigger deals? And why did you conclude that you could be more competitive and perhaps also add more value, shifting strategy to the lower middle market?
Obviously, like, it works, like, in anything in life like that. First you go to, like, school, then you go to college, and then, like, you graduate yourself. We didn't have any financial or PE background in us. We're, like, we are people coming from, from the factories, the industries, from ops. And so probably we didn't have, like, the sophistication and, like, in taking part on those deals back then. And also we didn't have the financial backing that, like, large private equity had in the case. We presented ourselves. I remember, like, the bid that it was like a 9x of the EBITDA for that specific carve out, and we thought it was, like, a very competitive offer, and actually was not. I think, like, the company PPC end up, like, being bought. I think it's public information. So, like, it's on the newspapers. End up, like, being sold for, like, $550 million.
So that's 11, 12x.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in order to be competitive in these kind of deals, you say that more track record, more sophistication, probably a bigger war chest for deal expenses, and not the least, better access to capital could have made you more competitive, but it was premature to compete.
Yeah, it is. Also, as we always knew it inside of us, but that's something, like, that it became always, like, more predominant on who we are and who we want to be. That we are not really, like, like a pure financial roll-ups. I mean, of course, like, we are buying businesses, but that's not, like, our main. That doesn't define us. Of course, like, buying companies is a tool that help us, like, to get where we want to go. But there is also, like, I think 50% of the of my headaches are not just acquiring companies, but also like integrating them and scaling them and helping them grow. That's like big part of of our the work that we do.
Does that headache evolve over time? Not only the magnitude of the headache, but also how it's split between M&A versus operations?
It's 50-50. I would say it's 50-50.
And you want it that way, right? Because you're hands-on and involved in operations. So you want to spend 50% of your mind share on operational items. And that's part of the value add and the concept.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That also what our capital providers demand from us and expect from us. That's one of the first conversation that we have when we sit down to a meeting or a table, where the companies are after from before when you bought it and after after that you guys took control. That's one of the first things that come out in the conversation. That it's important that kind of it fuel the next acquisition, what we do with a company.
Okay, so this is interesting. So in order to keep the momentum going and to maintain support from your LPs, you need to be able to show that you have been able to progress the targets that you've acquired. We've heard this before, but if you were to be more specific about this, what's enough, if that makes sense, in terms of how much progress do you need to be able to show in order to excite them to do another acquisition, and what would be not good enough? You need to keep your heads down for a little bit longer. Don't even think about M&A.
I think there's not a specific benchmark or on numbers. It's just showing that there are some improvements. And the two metrics, of course, it's revenues and margins and of the company. These are the two metrics that we show and that where we can add value. Obviously, again, it's we're not we're not the typical PE play. We're more on industrial group. So our time horizons it's 10 years at least, and we are we're very clear and transparent. The first as soon as we acquire a company, the results are not immediate. There is the part of that we add value, and that include also investing in the company with all in the infrastructure that doesn't have what it proved to be very, very useful for us is having a dedicated chemist that that can rationalize their inventory, can develop new products, having a dedicated sales team, adding or a production line, or actually optimizing productions. That's where where we really bring values, and also all the the back office and the centralized costs that it can have when a company join a group. If you think I told you that before, the biggest line of cost in coatings, it's the raw material. Buying the chemists, the binders, the polymer are very expensive. So when we buy at scale, every time that we buy at scale, we buy more. Our marginal cost of raw material decrease, and we can add margins to our play. That's really one of the value of of building an industrial group for us.
Edoardo, do you think that the three of you, that your day-to-day is considerably different, given that you're not finance people by background, how you're spending your time? Because what I'm hearing is that you guys have so much industry expertise and operational chops, but that in fact you're spending the time the way many of the sponsors who do have financial backgrounds that we talk to spend their time, which is making higher level strategic improvements to the business, but not being so in the weeds. Correct me if I'm wrong. How much are you guys on the ground and in the weeds?
Yeah. Well, of course, we cannot be present all the time, in the company. The companies are
Sure.
like scattered like all over the states, from Florida to Texas to Utah, and now like even in Europe, so there is like, of course, like a management and like like a CEO at the local level, if you want,
Yeah.
a general manager at the
Yeah.
local level. However, like we with each one of these, like this general manager at each company, we speak on a daily basis, and we have like our like recurring calls every week scheduled. That day I know that I'm going to be speaking with X. Tuesday I know that I'm going to be speaking with Y, and so on. So that's like how we manage it. How we split like like our time is like we are like very operational, especially myself, for the company that I bring in and that I manage, that I'm like motivated like to acquire. Roger, he does the same for his own side of the companies. Victor is a little bit more, if you want to say, like more on the involved with the capital providers. That's but again, like he's also like very much involved in the companies, in the overall like picture of in the weeds, if you want to put it this way. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Going back a few steps here, you mentioned that you're at 70 million of revenue, 10 million of EBITDA. You've done 5 acquisitions, and you're working on your 6th one right now. I think at one point you also mentioned that you have or are in the process of expanding to Europe. Can you share a little bit more about going international?
All the acquisition that we did was like they were in the US. The acquisition that we are finalizing now, that we've been working like for almost a year at this point, it happened by coincidence. I personally invested in a traditional search fund in Italy, and this company in the coating space, in the specialty coatings, it was like, it was not a good fit. It was too technical for the search fund. So he turned it like he essentially turned it to me and said like, take a look if you think could be good for your platform. And I happened to be in Italy at that time, and I met with the owners, and that was like a very I was very impressed by like the quality, the technical capability, and also like the niche that they are part of it. They essentially like they have like more than 2/3 of the global market share in their specific niche. Also, what was very interesting for us, that even though the main factory and the headquarters was in Italy, they also had like a production facility in North Carolina, United States. So there was an exposure to the US market. More I knew, like more I like the owners, and more I like the product that they were making, and the company. And I decided like, yes, to move forward with them. And actually, like it proved like to have like a lot of benefits, a lot of synergies, integrating with a company that is not US based, like the other rest of the companies that we have in the group.
Can you say more about the benefits that you saw that was specifically related to it being European, Italian?
Yeah, well, for instance, everything is more expensive in the United States, from due diligence providers to even to raw materials. So having a source, a suppliers that is like more diversified, that is like is located in a different geography. That's there are like some very interesting arbitrage in there that we can like that can benefit the rest of the group. Also, a big value that we see is like tapping on the distribution infrastructure that they were able to build around the world. The company has almost for each like world region, South America, Southeast Asia, Australia, Africa, they have a very thick distribution network with key people and trusted people that they sell their like product. Something that a small medium enterprise in the United States I really didn't see like having like that being like that infrastructure like to sell around the world. I believe like there is no need. They don't have like like a need to sell like outside of the United States, given that United States is the biggest market in the world, and so they're like happy and satisfying being here in US. So for like for us like having like being able to tap on that network of distributors around the world that belongs to the company, the Italian company, it will allow us like to sell much more products also from our US companies. That's like something that will prove like to be very, very synergetic for us.
Edoardo, you mentioned how so much is more expensive in the US. Does that also go for companies themselves? The multiples for buying a business like this in Italy, did you notice a difference there, that there's some maybe kind of immediate arbitrage between bringing their EBITDA into your American-based consolidation?
Honestly, no. I didn't. We also like I'm also like evaluating like different companies in Europe, and the multiple that I'm seeing are like pretty much aligned. If maybe probably like a little bit slightly more like expensive in Europe, I would say, in terms of multiples.
So Edoardo, I wanted just to turn back to the operator versus finance background question a little bit, and starting with understanding kind of the capital structure or the LP base here. And can you share anything about how you have financed the platform so far?
Yeah, we even though we are not we don't define ourselves as a PE, we are structured like financially as a PE fund. What I mean by that, we have StarStep Performance Coding Group is 70% LP and 30% GP, general partners. We financed our initial like acquisitions through a round of so-called like family and friends, about like about 12 family and friends. There was also like in the initial group like one or two family offices, but that's also can be considered like always family and friends. And we the way that we structure like acquisitions is very much like I would say like if I look like the deals, it's very similar like in each way, 50-60% in senior debt, and 20% of equity and 20% of earnout. That's the typical like capital allocation that we have when we acquire companies.
And after the friends and family round, did you raise a larger pool of capital to get you to 100 million of EBITDA, or are you raising deal by deal?
We've been raising deal by deal, and that's also like something that we at this point at our level it turned out to be like something that slows us down and a headache for us, trying to align and everything at the same time within the last 30 days. It's really like it put a lot of stress on us that we don't want to have. So like we try and like actually to raise now like I think we prove ourselves. We have a little bit of background. We're still like very much at the beginning, don't get me wrong, but we think at this point like it's time for us like to go out and like raise like a bigger some more capital that can help us to go faster in our growth. Yes.
You'd mentioned to us that you actually had worked with a third party capital raiser, right? Can you talk to us about what that looks like, how it's structured?
Yeah. I want to take a moment to say that I think there are three areas that take up most of our time in what we do in building the Star Step. One is all the deal making. So it's when I say deal making, it's finding good target company, negotiating the terms, due diligence, and then closing. That's that's one area that take up a lot of time. The second area, it's integrating the company, operating them, growing them. And the third, it's all the capital and financing aspect. What I mean by that, and when I say that, I also include all the relationship with the LPs, communication with LPs, which is it takes a lot of time. Looking ourselves in our strength and weakness, of course, we are pretty good operators, integrators, and we know how to grow the companies. We are okay deal makers. I think we're good in spotting quality companies, and eventually also I would say we're very honest and transparent in with sellers, with all business owners. They enjoy working with us because we speak the same language. They feel comfortable, and actually they end up all of them, the owners, they even though their initial plan was retiring, they end up sticking with the group. Time wise,
they intend to retire, but once they work with you guys or negotiate with you all, they stay along.
They stay along. Yes, they stay along.
And is that something you require, or is
no,
it just?
It's something that we offer. We offer some rollover equity. And also, to have a role as a advisor, consultant, and they end up all of them from the beginning of when we meet them on day one, they will say, "Oh no, I need to retire. I'm old. I want to enjoy life." Then at the end, they actually what we've seen that actually they want to stay around and be part of the group. They enjoy being part, speaking with the other owners. That's something that I see some pride in them. I see some pride in. They don't feel alone anymore.
Yeah, but they stay on as advisors and consultants. To be clear, they're not staying on as CEO.
Yes, exactly. They stay. Yes, yeah, not as CEO. They see as advisor, as an advisory role. And the third area that it's that is probably we are we're not add as much value as we want. Is the raising capital and financing the deals. So we decided at this point was the best way was the going hiring a professional investment banker from Wall Street, and we negotiated the terms, and we just. It's something that I cannot tell you much about it because it's something that relatively new. But I hope that it's gonna turn out to be the right decision for us, at least in in managing LPs, capital partners, and structuring the capital in a more efficient ways.
As you interviewed different bankers for this capital raising engagement, what were the ballpark range of pricing that you saw? If you don't have to tell us the specific one you went with, of course, but what was kind of the range that you saw when you were out in the market?
All of them, they want to have a retainer. The retainer usually is small or big, and
what 20,000 a month, or what are we talking here?
Between 20 and 50, between 20 and 50,000 a month. Yes,
I see.
And then they want a fee on the raise capital, which is we
A
have
commission,
seen,
you mean?
yes, a commission.
Yep.
Between we have seen between 2 and 5%.
Was it hard to find someone? Because, in the grand scheme of thing, we're still in the small business space, and you're going to raise 50 or $100 million, but that's nothing compared to if they can get an engagement where they can raise $2 or $3 billion for a client, right?
Right.
And if they get a commission, they would much rather do that. And so, was that a bottleneck? Did you get a lot of rejections because your concept was just too small?
Well, we were like we were looking to raise $150 million. Also, the type of conversation that we had is not a one-off. It's something there is a clear growth ahead of us. That's going to be the first of hopefully many more. Since our trajectory, it's not being or double it, but we're just 10% of our journey, if you want to put it this way. We want to be there. We want to be at 100 million. We are 10. So there is a lot of room for growth for all of our partners. But yes, of course, we kind of knew which partners, which investment bankers they were more in the lower market rather than the big markets.
Of the 10 million of EBITDA that you've come to date out of the 5 acquisitions, how much of that has been organic versus what were these 5 acquisitions if you combine them at closing?
Organic, I would say we end up we start acquiring companies in 2023. We have 2 years of history, and the first year at least there was a big reorganizations and restructuring of the company. That's our initial work that we've done with the companies. So it's still predominantly acquisitions. I would say probably 80-90% is still acquisition.
You had mentioned on our pre-call that increasingly you see the benefits of economies of scale. I think you've alluded to it in this call several times by talking about distribution network and multiple facilities and entities across the world. But what did you mean by that, economies of scale? Because it's not naturally something we hear a lot about in the small business market.
Yeah, raw materials are the most expensive item in the cost of goods sold for us, and centralizing the procurement that it proved for us to be very one of those initiative that has a very high impact on the margins of the companies that we buy. We said our procurement department is centralized in Texas. It's in one of the company in Texas, and essentially it's very it's not very complicated in the sense that more you buy, more you buy of raw material, and cheaper it gets the cost per pound. Essentially, so as we get bigger and we can buy more volumes, and it keeps getting more affordable, cheaper, for us, the cost per unit that we buy. Also, I gotta say, is also it's not just about cost. It really it proved to be very useful now in this tariff environment. When back in January 2025, February, when tariffs were started to being discussed, it was not they were not already in place, but they were we had a feeling that something was happening. The procurement department, they essentially stock up the inventory for for all the companies. They bought still before the tariff were effective. They bought almost a year of inventory of warehouse of raw materials that can get us by for 1 year until there was more stability in pricing.
But within industrials and manufacturing and industries where COGS are based on raw materials, or these are COGS heavy, unlike services, right? Do you think there's just like this permanent disadvantage that small businesses have? And so when you're an acquirer in a space, it's something you just need to structurally be very careful of?
Yes, of course. If you're competing, coding, it's there is a huge world when we say coding and paint. There is a coding, a specific coding with their own formulation, their own technology, their own IP for a specific type of product. Not all the coding is the same. When we say industrial coding, it can be wood coating, texture coating, glass coating. It can be for a lot of different type of usage. So what I see, that's specialty coatings are it makes sense in this case because the owners, they specialize in a specific niche, a specific vertical, where they can still compete, even though they have the raw material is they're not competitive with the raw material. For instance, the one of the company, it's the global market leader in something that you would never think about it, which is the pallet industry coating. So every pallet, if you see a pallet in the world, there is a 70% of chance that that the coating that you see on is done by a small company based in Italy. And who would think about that?
Edoardo, to close out, I want to circle back to something that we described StarStep as at the top, which is the acquirer of choice in the industry. So your first acquisitions were in 2023, not that long ago. And it sounds like just 2-3 years later, you've made a name for yourself in the industry, and in fact are a new home for a lot of businesses, or at least on the list. How have you, in such a short amount of time, become the acquirer of choice, or an acquirer of choice in your industry?
There are in the United States, there are 16,000 PE firms versus 14,000 of McDonald's. There are more PE firms than McDonald's, believe it or not.
I keep hearing this statistic.
Sometimes I read it, they're the PE now are 19,000 actually. So they're even more. That's that tells me something that I think there is not a lot of space anymore, or at least being in a generalist, PE generalist, independent sponsor. That's something that it's probably was working back in the 80s, in the 90s. Nowadays it's probably it's not something that I think it works well, at least not for me. So being very, very disciplined in the type of industry that we want to be, very, very industry specific. Coatings, we only do coatings, and not generic coatings. Also, in the coatings where we only look at specialty coatings. The second thing is adding value, not through financial engineering with a simple roll-ups, but the operational aspect that end up being useful. So I guess what allow us to grow and to make a name, even though it's still really the beginning of our journey. I think it's the being very industry specific, focus on one thing, and adding value through operations. That's kind of being able to navigate complexity and clean up the mess that there is out there.
Well, and not being traditional private equity, being operators from the category, from the industry. not being traditional private equity, and then the kind of the promise of being involved pretty closely with the businesses, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Any topics that we didn't hit on, Edoardo, before we let you go?
Probably on future plans. We're very busy, in what we're doing, of course, in building StarStep. Something though that we are considering that is going to happen is building a new platform. We don't know exactly when. Probably in the next 12 to 18 months, given that we're busy, but that's something that it makes a lot of sense for us is having a new platform in the application coding. We're now we're very upstream in with StarStep. We only focus on production, manufacturing of coatings. There is a downstream, there is a great opportunity that we are seriously considering and adding on with a new platform in the application space. The numbers of is very fragmented. The market is we're talking about thousands of potential businesses, small, medium, possibly small, but they all have a geographic relevance in them. And I think there is a very good opportunity for us, in rolling up the applicators downstream.
Applicator
Coding
manufacturers.
Applicators. Coding applicators, yes. They actually the people
which is the hardware that people use to spray on
the businesses that buy the business that buys the coding from us.
I see, and does the work of applying it. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let us know, Edoardo Maggini. We'd love to get a look at your next platform at Minds Capital.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, guys.
Well, thanks for joining us on the Minds Capital podcast. Edoardo Maggini will link to StarStep and your LinkedIn in the notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. For more like it, subscribe to the Minds Capital podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Also check out Minds Capital, where Nicholas and I are partners alongside Max Lummis. We invest equity in independent sponsored deals. So if you're a sponsor with a deal under LOI, please visit mindscapital.co to start a conversation. There's also an investor tab on our website with information about future fundraisers. See you in the next episode.